Unmute yourself, Maureen.
Right. Welcome to the first meeting of 2022 of the Caledonian Philatelic Society. Ian will keep me right on the number because I've forgotten to look it up.
It's 2620. It's 26. It's 2622, Maureen.
2622 meeting. So welcome everyone. Happy New Year. I hope it's a better new year than it has been last year because it was not very good for most of us. And welcome too to the people who have been persuaded on the committee to do a presentation tonight. And I look forward to what everyone has decided to go that they're going to show us. And we start off with Sandy Kerr, who has said to me it will be a surprise from Sandy. So on you go, Sandy. Thank you very much for doing this.
Need to unmute, Sandy.
He's
Have
not.
you got that?
That's it.
Okay, 2 points. One, this is how the president gets our submissions from the committee to pursue. And the second point is that if you say flatly, very slowly, it is actually a pun on the word philately.
So it is.
So we've been in lockdown, and I wonder what you did. Did you read? Did you browse your own albums? Did you actually perhaps purchase the odd one or two? Here are some of the things that I did. I'll show you a bit of each of these. It's not all that I did, but these are some of the things that kept me entertained. So starting with the Romanian Cinderellas, I had several sheets of these in a box of material that I came by, and I was a bit intrigued. And as I looked more closely, I discovered that they were all mixed up and that different sets had different borders. And so I had to unscramble them from the page on the basis of their border and rearrange them. When I came to the last sheet, I discovered there was a photocopy of a sheet at the back. And this, oh dear. This is in Romanian, but I had worked out that it was a minute of a meeting. So I had it translated by the people who run the local patisserie in Helensburgh. When you come down, you must try a place called The Artist. You know, produces the most eye-watering cakes. Anyway, this meeting is very early on, 18th of May 1915. I recognize some of the names as being well-known names in Romanian scouting. And at item 2, you will see they approved the buying of the Boy Scout stamps. So that was good. I have got provenance for these set of Cinderellas. The other thing I dabbled with was Helensburgh postcards, and every so often I will buy a duplicate. I'll buy the duplicate because of the postmark rather than the card. And here are 3 quite separate postcards. slightly different views, but all with the same person on the same seat, which appears to change colours as you move from one to the other. But something I hadn't done previously was to look at different copies of the same view. And another one that I came across recently was the talisman, and you may wonder what that has to do with Helensburgh. And the answer is that it's the name of one of the streets in Helensburgh, Talisman Crescent. There are a whole series of streets in Helensburgh that are named after either paddle steamers or Sir Walter Scott novels or poems. So that's the talisman. If you haven't read it, it's a cracking read, and then you'll find out what the talisman actually was. One of my main things was looking at the Scout Centenary issues. Politics played the usual games. We had a centenary of a camp in 2007, and you'll see that the Scout Association did not formally come into existence until 1912. But the youngsters had started the movement in 1908 because they read Scouting for Boys, and they all started up on their own, forming their own patrols and doing things. The national start dates mean that lots of countries are still issuing centenary issues for the centenary of Scouting in their own country. There is one stamp from each month in the year, and it gives you an idea of the range of designs, the frequency with which Lord Baden-Powell appears is one thing, the frequency with which campfires appear is another, camping scenes. And in number on the 9th of August, there is the emblem of the World Jamboree held that year. And then I took my first little entry into postal history. It's a subject I know nothing about. I'm sure lots of you will be dying to tell me what the 1 and the 2.5 are all about. I can make an intelligent guess perhaps, but this is the earliest that I've been able to find so far relating to Helensburgh. And if we look at the back of it, you can see the date stamp for 1828. And there's a scribble on the cover which says that it's to await collection. The thing I spent most time on was Sudan. I had decided I was looking for a topic that was completely different, took me into new ground, and I thought I'd go for Sudan. I knew nothing about it, discovered quite a number of things, including the fact that I only had to wrestle with 3 watermarks, which was a nice change. Got lost with the Gibbon's descriptions of the variation in the Arabic inscription because I didn't realize they were talking about a variation in the Postal Authority tablet, the brown one, as opposed to the denomination tablet, the one with a white background. Anyway, once I got that sorted out, I started looking and discovered that there were all sorts of variations of a theme with camels on, including the large commemoratives for their legislative assembly and independence, but also for the telegraphs, which have a train of camels going across the scene. Enough nonsense from me. Happy New Year to you all. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sandy. That was very interesting. And you had I've obviously had a busy year.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've got lots of other things to find.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, this next display is one which Lynn, poor soul, volunteered to show a display from the Calais to Leeds last Thursday. And I found her display absolutely fascinating. And I thought that you would all like to see it as well, because I don't think there was anyone else around. But Lynn is going to show us a display of Napoleonic postal history. So please, Lynn, thank you for showing it again.
Okay, right, share screen. Slideshow from beginning. Okay, this started. England and France had been at war for 9 years, and in 1802 they sort of signed a peace treaty with some other members of Europe who were also involved in fighting, because I think they'd all sort of ground to a halt. It was a very popular treaty, but as is the custom with England and France, it ignored some questions that caused problems, like trade relations and things. Just put that to one side. I think we've seen that happen again. But as far as the people were concerned, corn prices came down, and for the only time they abolished income tax. Not that that lasted very long. By the following year, beginning of in the spring, things were going downhill rapidly, and everybody knew that they were going back to war. The packets ran across taking the mail, but there were problems. The government learnt that any ship landing in France was going to be have the personnel detained by the French, but they didn't pass that information on to the post office. So one of the last packet that went across, which was on the Nancy, the poor guys who were on that were taken as prisoners of war in 1803, and they weren't released until 1814. So they were held for a long, long time. The main part of this display is the home correspondence. Captain Holm was Swedish, he was a sea captain, and his wife, Maria, was French. They lived in Calais. But they recognized that things were going downhill rapidly, and Captain decided he could carry on his business better in London. Unfortunately, Marie was very pregnant, so she didn't want to go across to London until he was well settled and the baby had arrived. So she was going to Boulogne to stay with her parents. They were very good at writing, and I have a number of their correspondence. Initially, things were running reasonably smoothly. A letter from Boulogne would take 3 days to get to London, maybe even 2 on some occasions. And this was the earliest letter I've got, which arrived on the 18th of May in London. And she's describing that she's travelled to Boulogne and arrived safely and all are well, and is going to try and send some letters or get some letters via Guernsey, because they might be able to get those through even if they're not coming from London. She wants to know if he has arrived safely. By the 22nd of May, she's got advice on profitable cargoes and is arranging finance for the 2 homes that they're having to deal with. Her brother's going to look after her, so she's quite all right. At the time, it cost 4 décimes in France to send the letter, and then there was 10pence to collect from the British end. And you've got the Boulogne stamp on this one, which I've lost for the moment. It's there somewhere. Some of the others are clearer. On the 3rd of June, it's not sure how the packet arrived, because you're not actually paying any money in France. And the writer was surprised that she had received a letter from London, probably sent on this sloop where the men didn't escape and the ship was used elsewhere. But It got through, probably via Guernsey, and she had 10p to collect, he had 10p to pay at the far end. The normal posts were closed, but this one came via Calais. It's got Calais' name up there, and a manuscript D on it, which may be from a forwarding agent in Calais. Again, probably going via Guernsey, and Guernsey, for fairly obvious reasons, often didn't put any markings on because they didn't want to get into trouble with the French. This one is forwarded at Calais, and it is marked that it's forwarded and by Dupont, which is where the letter D, I think, came from. But this one has actually gone from Boulogne. And the letter passed on eventually gets to London. And then for some reason, things seem to settle down. Marie suddenly gets 3 letters from her husband in London. She must have been very pleased with life. And she's worried that when she writes back that her husband shouldn't act against the French interests because don't want to upset her family. After all, she's very dependent on them. And these are still going through a couple of days from Boulogne to London. Life is fairly straightforward, but it doesn't last. This one goes from Boulogne on the 15th of June and arrived on a Friday. Normally they arrive on a Thursday, so there was some sort of delay. But she says, oh yes, the posts seem to be running normally in both directions, and she's very sorry if any problems caused with her husband's family by her support of the French cause, and supports him taking any ship available, get any cargo, we need the money. Then things come to a grinding halt. It's the beginning of end of June, 21st of June, and France has proclaimed an end to communications with Britain. Sir Francis Freeling was Secretary of the Post Office, and one of his minutes states that this is the last mail from Calais to arrive until 1814. Marie is able to tell her husband she's seen a doctor, both she and the baby are very well, and she's hoping for a boy. And we're back to the 4 décimes prepaid in France, 10p to collect in Britain. But that was the last letter that was able to go direct. They had to find another way because there was this complete halt of the Dover-Calais route. There were a few packets going in both directions. The French one carried French mail, the British one carried British mail, and both had people fighting to get onto the boats to get to whichever part of the continent they wanted to be, most of them trying to get to England. The problem then was, how do you get the mail across? For a long time, there had been a private post, it became an imperial post eventually, run by the Taxis family. They were ancestors had operated courier services in the Italian city-states and then spread round Europe. Franz von Taxis served as postmaster to the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian and to Philip I of Spain in 1504. And he became very, very wealthy on it, as shown by his portrait. He looks quite happy and fit and well. He hired lots of relatives and other people, and at the height had about 20,000 messengers carrying mail. Britain and France weren't going to actually correspond across the channel, but they both realized they still needed to talk to each other, and the merchants very definitely wanted a way of sending messages. So they came to an agreement with the Turnantaxis that they would exchange message letters in Hamburg. And this was ratified in July 1803, actually backdated as 24th of June, and carried on until Napoleon occupied Hamburg. What happened then, I don't know, because I don't have any material from 1806 onwards. It was slow. Instead of the 2 or 3 days, this is now going to take 5 weeks between Boulogne and London, because it's going to go right the way up to Hamburg and then back through the Netherlands and over to Britain. So things are going to take a lot longer. Turnantaxis did issue a few stamps later, and there are 3 possibly facsimiles there. And there's also a Belgian stamp showing one of the messengers. First letter that went via the Turnantaxis, it's still going out from Boulogne, but now it's 4 decimes prepaid, and it's now 1 and 4 to collect because it's going by this German route and therefore going much further, and it's going to cost more. Marie talks about how she had been getting advice on how best to send her letters with the new rules. And this goes via Brussels and Hamburg. Another letter sent via the Turnantaxis. It's getting the Foreign Office stamp on it. Nice clear one with the date, July the 18th, 1803. And she reports that she's received her husband's letter of the 23rd of June, last one that came direct, but he will now have to send it via this longer route. This one cost 2 and 8. It's getting expensive. Initially, they thought it would be 4 shillings, but it's been crossed out. That would have been a triple rate. This is the double rate, so there must have been quite a heavy, whether it had another content in it, because the actual letter doesn't feel any different to the others that I have. These continue, taking 32 days on this one, on the 29th of September, and a letter dated the 3rd of October that also arrived on the 31st. So they're coming down a little bit. It's not full 5 weeks, they're a little bit faster, but not much. And again, both costing 1 and 4. The first one, she tells him that she's received a letter from him which travelled via Lisbon. And then the next day she was safely delivered, but it was a fine baby girl. So she didn't get the boy she was looking for, but she did get a lovely little girl. The other letter, which he actually received on the same day, they're both marked the 31st of October. It'd be interesting to know which one he opened first, because this one tells him that their daughter's named Anna. This one travelled via Orotova, a letter from him which travelled via Orotova, wherever that might be. And last couple, in the 25th of October, this one she sends in, which reaches in November the 23rd. She's had no letters since late September, and she doesn't know if he knows that he's got a daughter. And then she writes to some of his business associates, because she hasn't heard from him. Now, it's possible that he'd actually got a ship and was off at sea, but unfortunately, I run out of material at that stage, so I don't know the end of the story.
Great. Very good.
Thank you very much, Lynn. We're all now hankering and waiting impatiently to find out if whether they got together again. It's like one
I
of these.
tried looking it up
I'm
online.
sure you
and I
have.
couldn't find anything.
Somebody must know. But no, it was a fascinating story, and the length that they went to correspond with each other in a dreadful situation. So thank you very much for showing it. It was fascinating.
Thank you.
Now, George, you have gone off. We can't see you, and George, I'm wanting your chess things. And he doesn't probably hear us. Oh, there he is.
I can hear you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Yes.
Well, I did offer this to Maureen, and she said that she thought I'd be too busy with my house move, but as I said, it was quite nice to get something to while away the hours with. So I actually, this came out of the house move. So if I remind you that in the Christmas meeting, I paid homage to Carlsen, who at the age of 31 had just won the world title for the 5th time. And I asked if he was the greatest player in history, which is not a question we can answer, but we can debate ad infinitum. But I said to him a little doubt that the most famous chess grandmaster of all times is Bobby Fischer, Robert James Fischer. And I'm pleased to say I can't see you, so I'm going to say who can forget the matches essentially in Reykjavik in 1972? And the answer is probably most of you. Shouldn't underestimate the importance of this game. I mean, it started in July 72. Spassky won the first game. The final game was in the end of August. Spassky resigned overnight, or when play resumed the following day, and that made Fischer world champion. And if I read from a chess book that was written at the time by a British grandmaster, no chess encounter has ever caught the imagination or aroused such widespread interest as the Spassky-Fischer match for the championship of the world. There are many reasons for this. Fischer's striking personality, his chess genius, as shown in his unprecedented results in the World Championship, the challenge by an American to the post-war domination of the Soviet school of chess, and at the back of this, an uncertainty whether Fischer can beat the formidable Spassky. And you can see there, Fischer was pretty eccentric. He didn't turn up for the opening ceremony. He refused to play to begin with, and he was only won over by the British businessman who threw some more money into the pot, and Henry Kissinger, who phoned him a couple of times to tell him how important it was that he beat the Russian. But as you can see, it made him a bit of a personality, and he shared Sports Illustrated with Mark Spitz. I don't think there's too many chess players have done that since. So I had a series of postcards which portrayed various aspects of this match, and it gives you some idea of the hype and surrounding the match. And they're fairly amusing, fairly lighthearted. I was looking for them about a year ago and couldn't find them, and I found them when I was tidying up a few things for the move. So you're about to see 10 seconds of each to give you some amusement. So there we are with Fischer on his knight attacking Spassky with his rook and being held up by presumably the Russian, the Politburo, probably. He's bowling over Spassky, quite an effective picture. There's Spassky, can't quite believe what's happened, but he's
George, we haven't moved on from your, well, we have now, that's the bowling bit, okay.
Did you get the bowling?
We've now got the bowling.
So there we are, and Fischer being dusted off, and Spassky going away in disbelief after losing. The two of them jousting. There's one with quite amusing, obviously tiring each other out. You can see that Fischer's still trying to get his hands on the trophy that Spassky's holding on to.
We've got stuck again. We're catching up now. It's going very slowly.
Well, maybe my internet isn't as good as I thought it was. I blame Blakely. He tried to set it up.
Oh, he's not there to argue.
There's the next one there.
Yes, I am, Maureen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry, Alan.
I saw that he'd entered. There you can see the two of them there with the other people. Fischer thought that the Russians were gamma rays or something they were directing his way to try and put him off. So he had all sorts of rules about what could the seating arrangements for playing the match.
I thought it was a minister.
There's another quite good one there of the two of them fighting. There's the American lassoing the crown from the Russian. That's my favorite.
I think that's good. Oh.
The American eagle attacking the Russian bear. There they are again. Just that was quite appropriate actually, given that Reykjavik is the dividing line between the two continents, where you can visit where the Icelandic Parliament used to be held. Quite effective. Into a tennis match. Dancing, perhaps, with perhaps they'll be entering Strictly next year.
Oh, yes.
Now that two boys are allowed to dance together. And there's the boxing match where they've tired each other out. Still fighting. And that's it. We're now chess-wise on to 2023, which is the next World Championship. Carlsen said he can't really be bothered and he might not defend his trophy, but if some 18-year-old who almost won his way through to qualify this year comes along, he might come after all. But, watch the space. So I am stopping sharing.
Thank you, George. That was super. Very amazing.
Sorry about the internet.
No, well, you'll get there eventually, like everybody else. I still have problems. But no, thank you. Super duper. And some very, very clever articles. Yeah. David, can we carry on with New Zealand last year, please?
That's okay.
Part 2.
Right, I decided to show the issues of New Zealand from 2021. I got a bit of a surprise because I didn't realize it actually issued 16 different sets, including 2 definitive sets. Some of them I showed last time, which relate to Christmas and New Year. I'll give a quick run through of the issues that they produced last year.
David, you clicked from current slide, but it's still showing your PowerPoint screen.
Is that okay?
No, it's still the minimized one, David. You like to try from the beginning, see if that works better.
Should be okay. I'll stop and come back in again.
That's better.
That's better. Yep. We can see the whole screen now. Yep.
Right. Okay. Now, the first issue was holiday at home. They were keen, due to the lockdowns and virtual closure of the borders, to encourage people to wander around New Zealand and see their own country. So the first issue did a holiday at home, broadly based on I Spy. So the first one was Mount Taranaki, which some of us might remember as Mount Egmont, a very conically shaped dormant volcano in the North Island. Kiwis, of course. Stargazing, there's a sort of dark sky area down in the South Island. You'll see the Southern Cross, etc. Dolphins and whale watching, very popular. And the treaty grounds at Waitangi up north of Auckland. Lighthouses, there's plenty of them. They're dotted all around the coast, some of them quite old. Gardens, Hamilton is renowned for its lovely gardens, just south of Auckland. Canoeing and boats. New Zealanders are very fond of water sports, and we'll come to that a little bit later as well. There's probably as many yachts as people in New Zealand. And every issue, of course, they have first day covers. On one cover, there was 6 of them, and the other one with 3. This, I think, was an excuse for a stamp, just a stamp, no covers, no miniature sheets, nothing, just to record 35 years since the Homosexual Law Reform Bill was passed in New Zealand. It shows the Progress Pride flag with all the 6 colours, red, orange, yellow, green, blue and violet. International record of LGBTQIA+, goodness knows what all that means. Yachting, I mentioned yachting. The Royal New Zealand Yacht Club celebrated 150 years. It started as the Auckland Yacht Club, became the New Zealand Yacht Squadron, and then gained royal patronage in 1902. And I think the Duke of Edinburgh was the patron until he died. So they showed 4 of the main yachts that were a key to success, starting with Rainbow back in 1898, winning the 1900 Intercolonial Regatta. Rainbow the second, winning the 1-ton cup at the second attempt. Steinlager 2 won all 6 legs of the 1989 Whitbread Round the World race. And you can actually see that ship, that boat, mounted on a plinth down at the main harbour in Auckland. And the last one is the boat that defended the America's Cup in 2021. Again, miniature sheet and a cover with the miniature sheet and a cover with the stamps. I mentioned America's Cup. 36th America's Cup, New Zealand successfully defended that. And you can see them, Victoria's team there with the old mug. And there's various six stamps, 3 on one side, 3 on the other side, just showing action scenes from the races. And as usual, that was issued almost as soon as they crossed the finish line. Queen Elizabeth's 95th birthday, the 4 stamps. Queen Elizabeth II, she was the first monarch to visit New Zealand and the first to adopt the title Queen of New Zealand. So they showed 4 stamps showing her through the years, young princess. I think that's from the wartime years. In 1953-54, she undertook a 6-week tour of New Zealand and visited more than 45 different towns and cities. And indeed, she's made 10 trips to New Zealand, as has a lot of the other royal family. And finished one, the Queen today, 95 years old. With a miniature sheet and a couple of covers. The cover here shows the Prince and the Queen in October 1981 in Wellington. And on this one with the miniature sheet, you can see the Queen with a Maori cloak on the 1977 visit. On to May. Showed stamps for Sarah Featon, a botanical artist. The Art Album of New Zealand Flora, published in 1889. That was the first full-colour art book published in New Zealand. Very strong in science, and had a lot of popular appeal to the people and to the Maori as well. Two of the stamps there, the Karaka and the Kauhai and Guta Kaka, featured on the 1960 definitive stamps quite prominently. Miniature sheet, and on this cover here, there's a sketch of the black spider orchid, and on the other cover here, there's Caledonia minor, commonly known as white fingers, for more or less obvious reasons. Postal rate increase in June 2021. Three more stamps issued. Self-adhesives for the $2.80 and the $3.60, and a gum stamp for the $4.10. These add to something like the matron stamps in Great Britain for going back to the 1990s. They've issued these scenic definitives, and they're very nice. And they go through a number of reprints and of issues of the booklets and the stamps themselves. The pair in the middle here come as a pair. You get them when you buy the stamps from the post office. They generally send you the pair. That's from the jumbo roll, which is used for making the first day cover. And then the singles come from the jumbo roll. And there's booklets. I showed this one last time, Maori New Year, 4 stamps there for the Matariki, which took place on the 24th of June, when the Pleiades comes over the horizon. Now, just a point to make, I didn't mention it last time. Quite often what I find is when I get the first day covers, the stamps are squint. Although they're put on by machine, I believe, very often they're squint. Sometimes I've made complaints back to them and they'll ask me to send it back, and they'll send me one with the stamps quite often still squint, but maybe not quite as bad. The Kiwi stamps, this is the third set, 2011, 2016, and now 2021. This was for the Do Something New Zealand. The tourism campaign started in 2020. These are produced as non-value indicated stamps, so they hold their value. In this case, it'd be $1.50, $1.60, and they come in a 100-roll dispenser. So there's 100 stamps on a long strip. So there's 5 stamps in the roll here, and you get them on the booklet as well. And again, you can see there's a bit of squintness attached to that. So how on earth we can manage that, I don't know. I'm intrigued how this card here actually got back out the sand. It looks as though it's bogged down. So another issue, which was probably in addition to the planned issues, New Zealand Post bought Courier Post, Pace and Rural Post, and put them all under the single banner of NZ Post. And they now have a different logo, which will appear on the NZ Post website and on any documentation. Of course, Prince Philip, commemoration of his death. We went to clear with their information when this was issued, so I did a bit of digging about and found that the picture in the middle shows Duke in the uniform of the Admiral of the Fleet in Bremerhaven in Germany. I'm curious why they used that one from Germany. It also shows a 1-year-old Prince Philip, and at Richmond Adult Community College in London in 2015. And the bottom, they only issued it as a sheetlet, a miniature sheet. But the medallion here, I had to do a bit of digging to find out this actually shows the Order of New Zealand. It's limited to 20 living members. And they're entitled to use the letters ONZ. This was the Paralympics, which I mentioned last time, and the problems they had with Cameron Leslie withdrawing before the Games due to COVID worries and his wife expecting, and Emma Foy, the visually impaired cyclist, retiring. Although Sophie Pascoe won 2 gold, a silver and a bronze out of the 6 golds, 3 silvers and 3 bronze. So she was the most successful New Zealand Paralympian. Miniature sheet and the cover with the miniature sheet as well. Of course, we got to September and then, hey ho, here we go again, Lord of the Rings. So they went to town when Lord of the Rings first came out with the 3 different films, and then another issue after that, and then The Hobbit. So I've got a couple of albums full of all the stuff from this. So there's 6 stamps, because you get the stamp, you get the miniature sheet, the cover, and the cover with the miniature sheet. So the journey begins, hiding from the Black Rider, prancing pony, fight to the ford, the bridge of Khazad Dûm, gates of Argonath. There's 6 stamps altogether, 3 in one cover, 3 in the other cover. And of course, what tended to happen last time round with the Lord of the Rings initial sets and the Hobbits, any stamp show going around used them. New Zealand Post would issue a miniature sheet with the Lord of the Rings stamps on them. Sometimes they had gold embossing or silver embossing. So they produced this miniature sheet. There should have been a first day cover, but the actual exhibition has been delayed now. It's been rescheduled for the end of February, and there'll be a cover when that comes round. I'll expect the 2 Towers and the Return of the King might introduce another set of commemorative stamps, and goodness knows what will happen with the Hobbit. And Shubh Diwali is the Hindu festival. So I showed this one last time. The stamps are issued in little sheets with the stamp in the square pattern, but they're actually best seen as in this group of 4 here, showing all the images in a vertical manner, the values horizontal. And the covers on miniature sheet, of course. And Christmas, which I showed again. And again, there's a jumbo roll of the 3 self-adhesives. And the booklets. The one in the middle and the one at the right are the airmail rates. There's Australasia and the Pacific Islands, and then the rest of the world. And the stamps of the airmail logo on the stamps itself. This one here is for the internal demand rate postage. Miniature sheet, cover and cover. And the Year of the Tiger. Well, it's issued in 1 December, it doesn't occur until the 1st of February. So they get well ahead of themselves. Covers. There we are. That was 2021.
Right. Would everybody like to thank very much in the usual way all our 4 illustrators, because I think these displays were absolutely super. Well done, everybody. Now, I hope that you've all had an email from me recently with the new syllabus on it. I have sent it round.